There are some people out there that claim that the internet wrestling community just hates Roman Reigns no matter what he does, and that they're just set on disliking him because of force of habit. However, while I don't think that's true for Roman, as I feel that his more common criticisms tend to be fairly accurate, I do dare to say that I believe there is one such individual that the argument does hold up for, even though I really don't want to admit it. But we might as well get it over with, because today, Dave knows 7 things that Michael Cole is actually good at. Thank you so much for the support over on Patreon, Rick Rack. Seriously, thank you so much. Alright, let me start by saying that I am not a Michael Cole fan, and yes, I do know what I said at the beginning of this video, and no, Michael Cole isn't standing just off screen pointing a gun at me. My point is that I am willing to admit that I may perhaps be just a bit too harsh on WWE's main play-by-play guy, as I have noticed that he does do some things fairly well, but alas, I still rank him very low on the proverbial ladder. So, while my feelings on his commentary haven't changed, and I'm still eager to have him replaced behind that desk, I thought that I would at least acknowledge his skills where he does have them. And with that being said, let's just get this over with. Calling through moves. Now, I have already discussed this with Stephen James in my episode on what makes for good commentary, but I do have to reiterate since I think an often overlooked skill of play-by-play commentary is the ability to call through a move. Emphasizing your voice at the precise moment of impact as a big move is being hit, such as RKO out of nowhere, or he follows it up with a thunderous right hand, or vintage Orton. We've all heard these before. Yes, it is cliche at this point, and I do think it's overly redundant how he almost always has to say the wrestler's name along with the move, such as Styles Clash by AJ Styles, Chokeslam by Kane, or John Cena with the AA. But let's just take a moment to recognize that his timing and accuracy is really well done when it comes to hitting the emphasis button with amazing precision on a continual basis. And he really does do a good job at getting the name, the guy, and the move over. Voices in my head. Perhaps one of the reasons why Cole tends to do some of his best work when he just happens to be calling a Randy Orton match is because he too hears voices in his head. They talk to him. Because another good thing that people have said about Michael Cole is that he might be the best in the business when it comes to commentating with someone squawking in his ear. As many of you have probably noticed, WWE commentators tend to wear headsets. Now, this isn't just so they can hear themselves speak or to drown out the crowd, but it's so they can have a direct line to the backstage management, who are constantly barking orders at the commentary team and changing their minds as to how they want things to proceed. And this specific skill is something of a special ability, as there are some veteran commentators who remember a time before this used to happen who have mentioned that they don't like this practice as done by WWE, and that they feel it's really hard to call a match with someone in your ear the whole time. And when you look at things this way, I guess that's more than enough to give him a pass for making minor errors. Journalism. It's not too often talked about, but Michael Cole was an actual journalist before joining WWE. He worked for CBS Radio and has covered everything from presidential campaigns to Waco, Texas, to Oklahoma City, and even war. He got the job with WWE when fellow radio personality and familiar face to old WWF fans, Todd Pettengill, recommended a young Sean Coulthard, which is Michael Cole's real name, for the job. He eventually took over for Pettengill in 1997. All in all, I just find it interesting that Cole has these credentials and that they go unnoticed by many wrestling fans. Not the worst. Alright, so this is a bit of a backhanded compliment, but I do feel the need to point out that Cole isn't the bottom of the barrel when it comes to WWE commentary. Of course, I'd much rather listen to Mauro Ranallo or Tom Phillips, and definitely Corey Graves, but let's not forget that there are plenty of others who have sat behind the commentary desk only to be worse than Michael Cole. Vic Joseph, Dio Madden, and even Jonathan Coachman, at least during his most recent go-around, weren't exactly stellar. So while Cole will never be up there with the likes of Gorilla Monsoon, Jim Ross, or Joey Styles, there are more than a few names keeping him from being the absolute worst. Knows what he is. When it comes to being in the professional wrestling industry, even more so than in other businesses, having confidence is key. However, in many cases, confidence can go astray, as there is a fine line between confident and ego. But in the case of Michael Cole, he doesn't seem to have much of one. He seems to be readily aware of what he is and is willing to serve whatever role he needs to play. He's humiliated himself, he's comfortable with being ridiculed, and he comes across as someone who very well knows that he's not the most liked, and he just takes it. Wrestling always needs someone to be the butt of the joke, and Michael Cole voluntarily wears that hat pretty well if you ask me. heel at play. Okay, while I will admit that it didn't go very well, I have to admit that Michael Cole did do as best as he possibly could with being asked to do a near impossible task of being a heel play-by-play commentator. Again, I didn't like it when it happened, but you can make the argument that no one is really capable of doing this. When you think about it, what makes a play-by-play commentator good in the first place is that he calls the plays as they happen. And fine, he doesn't do that all that well under normal circumstances, but when he was a heel, at least he had an excuse and handled it better than most people expected, to be honest. The problem is that being a heel requires character work, where calling moves is just a matter of facts. Putting a heel spin on what should be a neutral act is a pretty difficult job to pull off. It's the reason why color commentary, a position that's just there to add some life to the audio, is so often for heels. When you have nothing else to do but sprinkle in your 2 cents and give commentary some counterbalance, it's easy to be mean. And yes, many play-by-play guys do give their opinions too, but they don't get the chances to do it as often as the color commentator does because they still have to call the match. So while it may not have been great wrestling television, it was a huge ask and one that I think he could have done a lot worse with. And I also want to point out that he did handle Jerry Lawler's unfortunate medical emergency as best as could be expected. Longevity. Some might actually see this as a detriment rather than a plus, but Michael Cole is one of the longest running WWE employees there is, even if some people do wish that he hung up his headset years ago. Think about it. He's been with WWE for over 20 years, and unlike some other part-timers or legends, he's there almost all the time. How much time off can you really remember him taking? And in this day and age where some of us are criticizing WWE's champions for never being around, we should be applauding those who put the time in, and that should extend to commentary too, no matter who they are. Oh, and plus, let me also point out that over his tenure, there is an entire generation of wrestling fans out there who think of him as the voice of WWE, as disturbing as that may sound. And sure, I'm not saying that he's the only employee to have a long run with WWE, and if I could pick only one wrestling personality to last over 2 decades and counting, Michael Cole wouldn't be my first choice. But regardless, I do feel that his Cal Ripken level of dedication to World Wrestling Entertainment does deserve a bit of a nod. Well, there you go. 7 things that Michael Cole is actually good at. This episode was not easy to make. But anyway, what are your thoughts? What are some compliments you can give to Michael Cole? Let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Oh, and I also want to give a big shout out to my Patreon supporters, Jesus Farrell and Rick Rack. Thanks so much for the help, guys. It's coming in at a really good time right now. So thanks again, and as always, Dave knows.